So good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. If you are new to Temple Buddhist Center, I don't want you to think that this is a regular part of our service. We're having a visit today by a friend of ours. His name is Bodhi Bone. And he is actually an ancestor of the clan that Siddhartha Gautama was a part of, the Shakyamuni clan. So, as many of you know, I don't actually sit down and prepare Dharma talks. I try to hold space and allow them to come to me. And this week was no different. Sometimes they come sooner than later. Sometimes they come the night before. Those can be a little bit nerve-wracking. However, this one came all week long. It was a constant bombardment. It started with I was doing some work on the internet, and for some reason or other, this little news thing kept popping up on the side, and it kept telling me that archaeologists in China have discovered a bone from, they think, the actual Buddha. It's in a little golden box, and it was hidden deep inside a stupa in China, and all of the carbon dating takes it way, way back. And so this keeps popping up, and I'm like, I read it, and even when I read it, it kept popping up. And then also I had a call from a woman this week who her son is in the prison Dharma program, and so he wanted some mala beads, and she sent him a munda mala bead. So it's a regular mala bead, but at the guru bead there was a skull, which is very prominent in many Hindu and Buddhist iconology and traditions. Unfortunately, the prison sent it back to her because they thought it was a tool for satanic ritual. So she's going to send him a different mala bead. And so as you can see, this theme of skulls and bones kept popping up. So, I am working on being attuned with the universe. So I'm like, oh, okay. So there's today's talk. And so while the representation of skulls in Hinduism is fairly straightforward, Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism specifically take the concept of skulls quite a bit deeper, with a unique perspective, in fact. Similar to Hinduism, skulls are generally depicted as a necklace around a deity, and they are known as a munda mala. However, instead of representing death or loss, skulls represent an important Buddhist concept, that of emptiness. This concept of emptiness, in Buddhism, emptiness is considered to be a quality of the universe. It means that the phenomena we experience each and every day is itself empty. We attach meaning to each and every phenomena, each and every experience that we encounter. You often hear of, in many teachings in Buddhist practice, die before you die. That won't help you, my friend. But die before you die means bringing an awareness to the emptiness of phenomena. We attach meaning to these experiences. So the idea of emptiness is form, form is emptiness. You hear this teaching a lot. The idea behind this is that basically all events, all experiences are neutral, but we choose to magnify the experience and magnify this in our minds. Our minds overlay an attachment of judgment, story, and commentary to all phenomena and experience. And this brought me to a delightful little Dharma story that kind of brings this point home. This is the story of Wan Kyo, a Korean monk who lived 1,500 years ago. So Wan Kyo was a monk at a monastery in Korea, and he came to the conclusion that he wanted to be a better monk. So he decided he was going to set out for China to study Buddhism. And he found a little friend, Zhang Kai was his friend, and the two of them set out on an incredible journey to China. And a few days into their journey, night began to fall, it was getting dark, and a huge storm blew up. And so Wan Kyo and Zhang Kai saw a cave, and they ran to take shelter in this cave. And they got into the cave and got themselves settled in, and they bedded down for the night in shelter from the storm as it was raging outside. And in the middle of the night, Wan Kyo woke up, and he was very thirsty. So he began groping around in the dark for something to drink, and he found a gourd, and he took a drink from the gourd. Clean, pure, clear water that quenched his thirst and allowed him to, satisfied, go back to sleep. As morning arose and light came into the cave, both Wan Kyo and Zhang Kai were terrified as they looked about them and found all around them skulls. And Wan Kyo looked down to see that the gourd he thought he was drinking from last night, pure, clean water, was instead a skull filled with stagnant, stale old water. Wan Kyo began throwing up, and both men huddled in terror as they looked about them. But right at that moment, Wan Kyo had a satori, an awakening experience. And at that moment, he turned to Zhang Kai and said, "Let's go home." They went back to the village. Wan Kyo denounced his monk's robes, returned to the village as a lay person, and from there to the end of his life, he taught, he spoke regularly to the regular lay people in the village, and became a huge asset and a jewel to the village for his teachings and his awakening. So the lesson in this story, I'll give you just the basic Western interpretation, which is simply this. Wan Kyo's needs were met with the shelter from the cave, and the water that he drank quenched his thirst, and he was happy and he was satisfied. It is only when, through his senses and his perception, did he suffer as he looked at the skulls around him. He did not need to go to China to be a monk. He did not need to go and study Buddhism. All he needed was to meditate, to realize his true nature. The senses and perception create suffering because they create an illusory world. Like this story, the type of mind that we have in every moment decides the world that we live in. Would I be living in the real world if my mind was false? If I have a false mind, I live in a false world. If I have a real mind, I live in a real world. Then how can we know whether our mind is real or false? To answer this is a reading from Master Myung. And it goes like this. Man's eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and body were made as picture-taking tools from birth. And his mind is where the pictures taken of the world are stored. What we call karma is taking pictures of that which belong to the world and living in those pictures in one's mind, instead of having a mind that is one with the world, free and clear of judgment, story, and commentary. A person who lives in the false world accumulates karma because they have betrayed the origin that is the world by making and living in their own world. Man whose mind is false is always hungry, which is why he constantly tries to consume things. And in the Eastern interpretation of the word consume, it is all of our senses. Everything that we take in is what we consume, versus the Western definition of consume, which is, the buying and using of products and things. In the Eastern interpretation, everything that our senses take in is what we consume. Which is why he constantly tries to consume things and tries to gain and seek truth with a capital T from what he has consumed. However, such actions only add more falseness to falseness, adding ever more suffering and burden. Only by discarding those burdens and by this path only can one truly become truth. While it is true that skulls are important to many traditions and religions, the Eastern fascination with skulls is totally unique. It could be argued even a tad bit morbid, and that may be true, but there is a certain quality of serenity to the interpretation and the use of skulls in Buddhist stories and iconology. Everything in our Buddhist practice embraces the inevitable conclusion of the transitory nature of this form. It comes and goes, rises and falls, like everything that our awareness observes. And this is to push us to transcend the body-mind, die before you die, and realize that the opposite of death is not life. The opposite of death is birth. Life is eternal and has no opposite. Here we can find some liberation. No bones about it.